So there were 3 that I put on the menu for today. I've had so many people, and I think last week I individually walked 5 LEAs through how to set this up. So I decided that it would be time to just do this in a whole one fell swoop. So that's what we're going to do. Now, I will say this, I am a Google district, and the Google SSO is how I have gone through and set this up. So everyone who is a Google district, if you want to go through this with me, we can do this all in sync. If you are Microsoft or using an external IDP as your provider, I've got Drew D. So Drew, can you unmute?
Yeah.
So y'all, Drew, if you don't know Drew is with Baldwin County. They're also a pilot in this, and he is like super smart. I go to him for all the higher technical questions that even I don't understand. And I love Drew to death, and he can't go anywhere. You must stay in Alabama, Drew. So he's going to help and can answer questions from the Microsoft side and from the external side. I will tell you that I'm going to be going off. This is the documentation that PowerSchool has out there on how to set up the single sign-on. So I'm going to drop this link in chat. And I will tell you, I'm somewhat going back, but somewhat not, because when the pilots set up the SSO, we actually went to a different data set to pull for staff and teachers. And I'm going to show you the data set that I pulled with that's not in this documentation. There is one typo on this documentation that I'm going to make you aware of on the Google side, because I haven't done the Microsoft side. I cannot vet that piece to tell you. So if there is, maybe Drew can help us out on that. So first, let me say parts to setting up. Oh, the link doesn't open. Oh my, why is it not opening? Let's see. It is in. I will again to this webinar sheet. This is all of the office hours that PowerSchool put out, and it's in this little link right here. They did it on December 15th, and if you'll click on this link, it's not the one that I have open, so I'll have to go find the email and send it to you, but it's this SSO documentation. So I'll pull it out and send it. But this is what I'm going by. There's 2 parts to the single sign-on. You've got to set it up with the provider that you're using, and then there's set up inside of PowerSchool. Now, again, depending on what provider you use, whether it's Google, whether it's Microsoft, whether it's your internal system, that's going to be done in one step. And then when it comes to the setup inside of PowerSchool, no matter which way you did it on the outside, we'll all do the PowerSchool setup the same way. And you can do these in parts and pieces before you enable it. If you want to. So if you are a Microsoft district and you watch me go through the Google side of it, you can still do all the stuff inside of PowerSchool and not check the box until you get that outside piece put on. So we're going to kind of chunk this together. All right, so let's get that picture out of the way. So let's start with, what do I do to actually enable it? So you probably don't see the OIDC in your system settings under security, because you've actually got to go set it up to begin with. So let's go into, I keep having to move this. Our PowerSchool instance. All right, so I'm in Pilot, and I have not set up the single sign-on in Pilot. So I want to kind of use it to walk you through this. So the first thing you're going to do from District Office, let's go into System Administration. And let's see if you have it enabled for yourself. You might have it in there. If you're in Security, you should see an OIDC management in here. If you do not, that means we need to go and turn it on. So to turn it on, we've got to go to our plugin management. So you have to go down here to System Settings. I always forget where that's at. And you have this plugin management configuration. So anytime that you're wanting to add a plugin, this is where it is, and this is how they have the OIDC authentication routed inside of here. So if you see the plugin management dashboard, here is PowerSchool Sys as an OIDC service provider, and notice it is not checked. So the first step we have to do is to come into this plugin and actually enable it. So I'm going to click to enable it. It's going to say, are you sure, as it does with every plugin that you try to install. So I'm going to choose enable. And it says the plugin is successfully enabled. So now if I go back to my system screen and I scroll down under security, I should see the OIDC authentication setup. So that is step number 1, to actually get it where PowerSchool has you to be able to set that management up. Questions on the plugin management. And it doesn't matter if you're Google, Microsoft, external, whatever, everybody's got to come and do this part right here. We good there? All right, so now it comes time to register the application with the provider. Now I'm going to go through Google, but let me pull this over here to show you the steps are listed for Microsoft. So if you are a Microsoft provider and are wanting to set this up, these are the steps you will go through on there. Drew, is there anything that you want to say on these, or anything that they need to be on the lookout for as according to these directions?
Not really. The steps are pretty self-explanatory. So when you're in, for you Microsoft folks, if you are in the Azure portal, everything that you'll need to put back into PowerSchool is right there once you set up the app registration. Once you go through the app registration process, it sort of gives you all the keys to put right in there. So it's pretty straightforward. There's not a whole lot of extra stuff, but
and if anyone, because this was the thing, even Google, like it starts up with set up the OAuth consent information. Give you any directions on how to do that, just like here it doesn't give you the directions of how to actually register the application inside of there. So there's some knowledge it has to be had on your provider on the backside. I just went through and started honestly clicking things in Google until I figured it out. I had not set one of these up for. I have one set up for me from Lightspeed, but you kind of have to know that piece right there.
Yeah, Stacy, this is actually the first time I've seen this set of instructions, but the one that we got it did actually kind of go through that. So let me and I don't know if PowerSchool wants me to do this, but let me go ahead and attach that document to because it actually goes through, at least I remembered it doing that.
Yeah, I'm sitting here looking at Drew because that's the set of instructions that I have been using to walk everybody through. And to me, it's more detailed than what they have put out in this documentation in this slideshow. And yes, somebody asked in the chat, will I go and show again how to turn that plugin on? Yes, I will. Give me 1 second. So Drew's going to upload that file, and if he doesn't, if you can't find it, Drew, just let me know and I'll upload it at the end because I don't mind sharing this. So just remember, there are different steps for each provider that you go through. All right, so let me go back to PowerSchool. How do I turn on that OIDC in there? So I'm going to go back to the home screen. So everything is all under system setup with this. So the first thing I've got to do is go to system. And then I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom of the page to system settings. Inside of system settings is this plugin management configuration. Okay, OIDC is ran through a plugin that PowerSchool has installed, but they have not enabled. So we click on the management configuration. And notice I've got a lot of plugins that I've installed. And you'll have some that PowerSchool has installed on our. the one you're looking for is this one, PowerSchool Sys as OIDC service provider. So if you'll come over here, if this box is not checked, you will need to check it. Once you check it, it's going to screen asking you, are you sure you want to enable it? And you need to click through the yes on that. Once you have this box enabled, then back on this system screen, under security, you now have this OIDC authentication setup line on here. Okay. So once you turn that plugin on, here is where you'll go in and manage it. All right, but let's now configure the external provider side. So again, I'm going through the Google side, and we'll get you the directions of how to go through the Microsoft side. And it does actually work with other types of IDPs in there. I know Lee County has an internal IDP, and I don't know, is Lee County on here, Andrew? Are y'all there? Or Thomas? I know I'm like putting people on the spot. They were looking at it to try to set it up within themselves. And Drew, did you have any knowledge of using it with the internal IDP provider?
Yeah, so we do not, even though I can show the Microsoft side, we are not going to use Microsoft as our identity provider for PowerSchool. We use a third-party identity provider. Identity automation is something, Rapid Identity, I guess, is the product name, but it's an SSO portal. Anything that's OpenID compliant. So it's called OpenID Connect is the protocol that PowerSchool has chosen to use for SSO. So you may hear terms like SAML or WSFed or ADFS. OpenID Connect is the protocol that they're using. And anything that is, even though they are not documenting anything other than Microsoft or Google, if you use like maybe ClassLink, I don't know, ClassLink is another one that's out there. I don't know if they are OpenID compliant or not, but you know, if you use ClassLink, or we're transitioning to identity automation from onboard as well. So anything that is OpenID compliant will help that. I know Thomas, we had talked about use ADFS. We had talked about he's having Lee County is having to update, probably have to go to the ADFS that supports OpenID Connect, but yeah, it doesn't have to be. And the reasoning behind what we do is we wanted one identity provider for all of our apps, meaning we are probably like most of you guys. We actually have Microsoft and Google. We have our foot in both camps. So we need a central identity provider for everything, and that is what identity automation does for us. Is one SSO portal, one identity provider to get into everything, and so we didn't want to Microsoft to Google, but because of that. So if anybody has any questions on that, feel free to reach out to me. I know I see Teresa, I can email on that, on how to set it up in Rapid Identity, in the Rapid Identity portal. But yeah, and I just mentioned ClassLink. I don't know about ClassLink. I know that's fairly popular. I know many of us use Clever still. I don't think Clever supports OpenID Connect at this point, but that's something I guess you can reach out to them and see if they do.
Yeah, I would definitely suggest reaching out if you're using any other and just ask their tech side if they do the OpenID Connect, and if they do, I'm sure they could work with you on getting that. If you don't want to go the Google or Microsoft route,
it's certainly better than, you know, nothing. I mean, having that Google or Microsoft is going to get a lot of people. I mean, a lot of you, if you're Google all the way, then there are so many apps now that support sign in with Google that you could sort of make that work. You can pretty much make that work, and then there not really be a, any issues. But I'm glad that they did an open protocol like this, that there are other ways to do it.
Most definitely, because having options is great, because we all have our intricacies in our LEAs of how we want to run things, and you're able to choose what's best for your district. So let's get into this and show how we are going to work with the Google single sign-on and getting that part set up. And this one won't take long at all. So the first place that you're going to have to go, have two screens so I can have my old one and my new one up. Move these. All right, so if you are a Google district, I need you to go to console.developers.google.com. So looking at this front part of this web address right here. So if you're following along with me, and I'm going to kind of slow down a little bit so that you can go there with me. Console.developers.google.com. Now, you may or may not already have some APIs established, API services. The way that you can tell is look in this top left-hand corner. Notice I have a term up here that says PowerSchool SSO. This is what I set up. But there's a drop-down box so I can look at all of my projects that I have. So this right here, you'll see that I have 3 projects in my scope right here. One of them is a PowerSchool single sign-on. I also have a one for our Lightspeed relay that we use in Lightspeed Classroom. So you will see those. So the first thing that you're going to need to do is to click on up here in that drop down, and you're going to create a new project. So when I create that new project, here's where we start up. All right, so the first thing is to name your project, and I just called mine PowerSchool SSO. So, and y'all, my typing is going to be horrible today because I sliced my finger open this morning on a cardboard box trying to get a battery backup out for somebody who's died overnight. So work with me on that. Oh, and Drew just put the instructions on there. All right, so this is going to be PowerSchool. I have set up for my production. I'm going to mimic for my pilot site. So name it. You should see the organization, opelikaschools.org, and location be the same. Yours should automatically pop up for you to be your domain name for your district as well. And so you would hit create. And basically, it's going to go back to that same screen where I just was. Now, see, it's creating, and now it has created it. If I do my drop down, again, you will now see that I have a 4th project up here, and it's the PowerSchool Pilot SSO. So you'll need to click on that drop down, come back here, and for whatever you named yours, if you called it PowerSchool, whatever, click on what you just named. Okay, so now make sure, double check up here that you're in the actual project that you want to work on. And the first thing that we're going to do is set up the OAuth consent screen. So I'm going to come to this and click. From what step, Benitha?
From the beginning. I got to, I clicked on new project, and that was it. And somebody came in.
All right, so when you have new project on your screen, is it asking for a project name?
Yes.
Okay, so type in, just put PowerSchool SSO so you'll know what you're naming it.
Okay.
And then hit create.
PowerSchool SSO?
Yes.
And just hit create?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And so once it creates, Benitha, you're going to come back up here in this top left-hand corner where that drop down was that showed all the project list. Hit that arrow, and you should now see that name inside of your list. Is it there?
Yes.
Okay, click on it.
Okay.
So once we're on this screen and we know we're in the right project, again, we're going to the auth consent screen. All right, so we have to choose a user type. You're going to choose internal, which means it's only to users within your organization. So it's going to verify based on if they have a Google account with you or not. So I'm going to choose internal and I'm going to hit create. All right, now we need to get into some naming of this and put some information in here. So what is the app name? I'm just going to type PowerSchool. Basically the exact same thing that I named the project. User support email. So put in your email address. You don't have to worry about the logo. Don't worry about the home page privacy link. What you're going to come down to is this authorized domain. We've got to do a little bit of typing. So the domain is your domain that you want to be able to authenticate through. So my Google domain is opelikaschools.org. Now, some of you have multiple domains, staff domain and a student domain. You'll need to put both of those in there. So put the domains within your district that you want to be able to authenticate. And then you're going to add one more. PowerSchool.com. So add in your authorized domains. And come down here to the developer contact information and enter your email address as well. Okay, questions on this page. Give everybody time to go through and do those. You're naming it, you're putting your contact information on there, and you're putting your authorized domains along with the PowerSchool domain. Once you finish that, you're going to hit save and continue. Yes, the recording will be available after this session is done. All right, throw you to a scope screen of which you're not going to do anything on. You're just going to come down here to the bottom and hit save and continue. This is the summary of it. You're just looking at it, nothing to do. Hit back to dashboard. So that part of it was not listed in the directions that PowerSchool sent out. So whether you look at what Drew put in the chat or this information here, that was set up the OAuth consent information. So that walked you through that. All right, now that we have that, we need to set our credentials up. So over on the left-hand side, you're going to click credentials. And there's nothing displayed here. So what we're going to have to do is come up to the top and click create credentials. So up at the top, we're clicking create credentials. We have to choose a credential type, and it's going to be this OAuth client ID. Our first step is to choose the type of application, and you're going to choose a web application. Once you choose web application, it's going to throw some information that you need to fill in. So the first thing you're going to do is name it. I'm just going to leave that and then type. See, I told y'all my typing was going to be horrible today. Whatever name you want to on there. I'm just going to put PowerSchool Pilot SSO. Once you put the name in, your next step is to do the redirect URI. So down here at the bottom, where you have this authorized redirect URI, click add URI. Now, do you know your PowerSchool web address? You're going to start off with that. So https:// colon / / Opelika. Actually, I'm going to put, so yours is going to be your district name with either CS or CO at the end of it. I'm going to put my pilot one in because I've already got my real one inside of there. So it's Opelika City-AL7. .powerschool.com. So put your URL there, and then everybody needs to put this exact statement at the end. Do a / OIDC / OpenID _connect _login. So everybody has to put their URL to their specific PowerSchool instance to begin with. So everybody's is unique to this point. And then after the .com, everybody who's doing the Google authentication needs to put this back in to be exactly as you see it right there. So after the com of PowerSchool, / OIDC / OpenID _connect _login.
Okay, can you hold right there before you go to something else?
I sure will.
Okay.
So on the instructions that I sent, there is like, there is I
A
remember,
typo.
Yeah, well, it's not necessarily yeah, it's kind of a typo. There, so I do remember having that when we were first going over this. Under the Google step number 9, it says enter the name of your district's URL followed by OpenID _connect _login. No, you have to make sure you /OIDC / OpenID _connect _login. So that /OIDC is important.
Yeah, because when I did it, I was trying to be, win the race. And so I threw it in there as it was and didn't put that. So when I tried to go log in, I got an error and it said something about OIDC being missing. So I had to come back and fix that in the URL. Thomas, do you have something at the end of login, or do you have a / here? Oh, 10-4.
Okay, Stacy, I've got a quick question. With the URL you just put in, that's the public facing URL, or is that to your?
So it's not going to have the admin, teachers, or public at the end of it. So this is actually the public facing one, because if you don't put anything, it defaults to that. But you're not putting that back in, because typically it's going to be, homewoodcs.powerschool.com /admin or teacher or something. You just don't put that back half of it. So you stop at the .com and then put that OIDC information.
Okay.
Okay. Good with that and ready to go to the next step? All right, from here, we're going to hit create. Now, here's the important. Now, you can come back to this screen, but you are going to need this client B and client C in the PowerSchool process that we go to next. So that's all it takes to set up the Google side of it. So once you get to this step, you're finished with Google. I would suggest, if you want to, open up Notepad or Word or Google Docs, something, and copy that client ID and that secret down. However, you can see back here behind me that it's published this out here. And if you ever need to come back, you can always come back into the project and copy them from here. So it's not like they go away and you're never going to see them again. So I'm going to hit OK. And I can always come right back into here and see there's my client ID and my client secret, and everybody's is different. Okay. So now I'm through with Google. So I'm going to go back into PowerSchool. All right. So remember, we turned it on where we now have the OIDC authentication set up under the security settings. So I'll give everybody a second to get back to. And remember, if you've logged out of PowerSchool, to get here, We'll go back to the home page. When you're on the home page of PowerSchool, to get to the OIDC settings, you come under System. You scroll down to Security, and here it is. If you do not see this, then you've got to come down here into System Settings and actually enable the OIDC password authentication plugin that PowerSchool has in there. All right, so can you go back to the URL 1 second? Oh, yes, I can. So there it is, Greg. And I guess I could have made this easy and type this in chat so that y'all can copy and paste. So there's the URL. You just need to change the front portion of what do you have before PowerSchool. So everybody's going to have their district. If you're a county system, it's got CO at the end of it. And if you're a city system, it's CS. So it's your district's name and co.powerschool.com, or your district's name, cs.powerschool.com. So when I look at what I really set up for my production instance, there is what I put in for my production instance, whereas the top one is what I put in for pilot. So I just threw those in chat.
Stacy, on that screen at the top, there's a blue activate button, and I probably missed this. Were we supposed to click that?
I don't see an activate button.
Okay.
Did you say, or like once you put this login in, there was a create button at the bottom?
There was, I think it was an ad. I can't remember what it said now. Let me go back to credentials to where you are.
Do you see a client ID and a client secret, Desiree?
I see the client ID.
Mm-hmm.
I saw the client ID and the client secret, and then I could click and said, I think it just said okay. And
yeah,
now,
so you probably are on this screen right here.
I am. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yeah, if you can click back on the name and it takes you back into that page that I was just in, where you can see all of it in full.
On the top right. Okay, now I see it. Okay.
Yep. Sometimes when you're looking at these pages in Google, they don't look like this does not natively look like a hyperlink. It just looks like text, and you don't know it's a hyperlink until you hover over it. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. All right, so we're back into PowerSchool now. So if you're Microsoft, you've gone and set up stuff in Azure, and now here is where we've got to go in, and no matter what provider you're using, this is the same setup for everything. So we're going to go into this OIDC authentication setup. And I'm going to pull up something on my other screen so I'm mirroring the correct thing for this. All right, so what we are going to do is check the enable box here to begin setup, because without having that checked, you can't do anything on the rest of this page. So I'm going to enable it. But what you are not going to do is you're not going to check any of these boxes down here yet. Stay away from those, or you could lock yourself out completely from your account and have to get your implementation specialist to go in and backdoor undo what you just did. All right, so the first thing that we're going to put in here is our IDP URL. Now, this is going to depend on if you're using Google or if you're going to use Microsoft, what you put inside of there. So if you are a Google district, then you're going to need to put in https://accounts.google.com. If I can spell right. And again, let me caution you, I'll come back to the screen, but on this documentation right here that I'll be sending, there is a typo that will mess you up. They put a at the end of com. You do not put that in there, or it will mess your integration up and you will lock yourself out. So do not put that / on right there. You come back into here, no /. If you are Microsoft district, then you are going to have to put in, I think it's on this screen. Yes, here is the URL that you will have to use if you are a Microsoft district.
Tenant ID is like, if you're familiar with Microsoft 365 and Azure. I didn't read that very closely, like Stacy. I was just trying to get it done. So I'm sitting there thinking that, oh, that's my my tenant name. It's not the tenant name. It's the once you create the app registration, it's on the overview page. It's the directory ID. You'll see directory, and then in parentheses you'll see tenant. So directory, tenant ID, and it's this big long GUID. But so it's not your tenant name. It's a unique identifier.
Okay. So again, you'll have that URL, but you'll have to find that inside of your Azure. All right, back to the setup. So now we've got it. Notice it's got the client ID and the client secret. So this is where I said you're going to need to know what you just popped up on side of those Google credentials. So I've got to copy and paste those into here. So if I come back to my page of my Google, all right, I can do one of two things. I can click in here and copy and paste. So here's my client ID. Then I'm going to come over here and copy. And then my client secret. Same thing, come in here, copy. So generated your Google credentials earlier. You need to copy your client ID and your client secret into those two boxes. So I'll give everyone just a second to get those copy and pasted in. Yeah, Shelly, let me, while I'm doing that. Okay, so y'all, the link that I just put in chat, that is a link to the Smart Sheet. And if you will click on the paperclip beside the one on 1215 for the SSO, remote school enrollments, that will bring you this PDF over here is what I'm looking at right here. So that I just put in chat will get you to the spreadsheet of all the office hours. Notice we've got an office hours today at 2 that's talking about Alabama rolls. And this is kind of new. So I'm gonna make sure y'all attend that one at 2 o'clock today. And this is where you can get to the recordings, but that's the SSO PDF document that I've been showing. All right, has everybody copied and pasted their client secret and client ID in?
Pamela, can you do something real quickly? Walk me back through how you got to the page that you're on right now.
Where I'm at right now.
Mm-hmm.
So if I go back to the main screen. I am under Setup System. And it's down in Security. So inside of Security is this OIDC authentication setup.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And notice I didn't submit anything earlier, so it wiped everything out. And that's the thing with PowerSchool that y'all all need to remember. There is a submit or save button somewhere on every page that you're on, and until you have hit save or submit, you will not be able to. All right, so the next step is to type in your scope. So if you are a Google district, you are going to type in OpenID space email. If you are a Microsoft district, you are going to type into the scopes OpenID space profile.
You can do email as well if you're using. Yeah, you can use if you're using email as the I know they're saying that, but if you're using email as the claim instead of the object ID. So we'll kind of get into in just a few minutes. We'll talk about what claim you're using, but you can use email as well as Microsoft. In fact, I know PowerSchool is recommending one thing, but I would recommend another. As far as what I guess we're getting into the next one about what the claim is. So what we're talking about with a claim is what's the matching identifier from a staff to your identity provider.
Oh, so what is it actually going to look for to do
what's it going to look
authentication?
So for Google, they're recommending email, but for Microsoft, for some reason, they're recommending the object ID of the user, which is it's just a number that nobody's going to know. And while that their point was, well, what if the person changes their email address, then it breaks the it breaks SSO. Yes, unless you staff record and change their email address to update it. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. And to me, it's just much easier to keep up with if you're using email as somebody's email address as the claim instead of some number that we just don't know. And that gets important when we look at one of the next steps and how PowerSchool implemented this. It's really frustrating to me they implemented this when it could have, it could have been much easier on the districts. They chose to implement it another way, but we'll talk about that in a minute about when we get to staff records and what's required on a staff record for SSO to work.
Yeah, because they decided to add another field in that we've got to touch in a different way, and that you can't touch in some ways. So for scopes, OpenID space email, and for authentication or identifying claim, you're just going to type email. Now, again, do not click any of these boxes yet, because if you do, you will lock yourself out of your instance because you have not set up the authentication spot that Drew just spoke of in the staff records yet. So once you get this information in up here at the top, without clicking these down here, you're going to hit submit. And you have changes saved successfully. So now what this does is this creates a spot for what they call a global identifier inside of PowerSchool. And this is the identifier that it's going to do the checks and balances against for authentication to get someone into the actual program. You are going to have to go and you're going to have a taste of what the pilots have been doing about pulling data down and importing data back into PowerSchool to get this set up. So to start, what I'm going to suggest, we're going to go through the steps. I'm going to show you how to create the template and pull everybody, but let's just do it with your account. If you're doing this in full steam with me to get this set up, let's practice only with your account and getting it in. So I'm going to now go and pull down the actual staff list file that I'm going to end up importing back in. So over here on the left of your screen under functions, you're going to come down to importing and exporting. And I have a feeling we're going to run into a bump right here because of some security permissions that we might have to answer this question on. So even if you're not setting this up with me in real time right now, if you will, check these steps as I do, because you might have a security issue that you don't know about. And if you do, let's address it in this now and not after you're trying to do it on your own, or you will get frustrated. So go to and exporting, and you're going to use the data export manager. Once we get into the data export manager, now this is where I'm going to show you steps that follow along in the document Drew put in the chat, not what's on here, because it takes you to a different set of data that we'll use it for students, but not for teachers and staff. All right, so for your category, I want you to choose additional data sets. Now here's where we're going to see if we have security issues or not. Once you choose that, do you get a drop-down list?
No.
Nope.
That's what I thought.
Nope.
Okay, so y'all have not given yourself permission to pull data out of PowerSchool, and you need to. So let's time out right here, and let's go address a security issue. So to get to security, it's under your system setup. Scroll down to security. All right, let's think. I think I just need to give you, I think everybody's got those roles in there. Let me backtrack what I'm saying. There's a role already created. Let me show it to you. And it's these two roles right here. You should have roles in your instance. You need to assign yourself those two roles.
Right. They just need to go to them. They just need to go to their page, go to
Yes.
their security settings and
Yes.
them that data role.
So let's go back to the beginning. Go find your staff file, everyone. If you've not given yourself this role yet. So I'm going to change this from students to staff. I'm going to go find myself. One day I'm going to find myself. I think this is the right one. And under admin access and roles, do you see how I have all these roles assigned to myself under here? One of them being data export manager. You need to add that to yourself. So I'm sure you're all in that administrator group number 9, and you might have renamed this to district administrator or something, or sys administrator, whatever it is. You're going to hit add. I'm just going to choose all the schools, hit next, and then give yourself these two roles right here. So use default group, click on those two boxes, data export manager, edit access, and then click OK. That's going to add all of these in here, but you've got to scroll to the bottom and click that submit button. If you don't hit that submit button, you're not going to get anything. So everybody go add those two, and then come down here and hit submit. That is what's going to allow you to do this push and pull of data from importing and exporting that you're going to need to do to get these global identifiers inside of here.
Hey, Stace, can you do that one more time? I'm sorry.
Yeah. So once you're on your screen for security, you're going to come over here to add. I'm checking all the boxes, and the reason I'm checking all of them is because I want to give myself access to all the schools to be able to do stuff with data. Even later down the line, you're going to want to do stuff with data export. So I hit next, and then use the default group. I'm going to choose these top two, the data export manager export access and the data export manager export edit access. I probably could just do the bottom one, but I've got it with both of them, so it works. So I'm keeping that for right now. I know I've got some redundant built into a lot of the setup in here, but until I really get my feet under myself with this, we're going to live with some redundancy. And then you hit OK on this screen. Once you hit OK on that screen, which I've already done, so I'm going to close out of that, it's going to throw those roles on here, but they're not saved yet. You've got to come to the bottom of the screen and hit submit for those changes to take place. Okay. Once you've given yourself those roles, you should be able to work in the importing and exporting fields now. So I'm coming back to the main screen, importing and exporting. I'm going back to data export manager. And we're going to start the export of our list. So for the category, again, I'm going down to additional data sets. In the export from, I'm going to go find one that's called staff, list of staff.
Still not seeing it, Stacy.
I did this with someone the other day and it took like a couple of minutes before their access was there.
Okay, I'll wait a few minutes.
Okay. And you might have to refresh. So we're going to export from staff, list of staff. So there's the one that I want. Once I choose which list I'm exporting from, when you're using Data Export Manager, you get all these options of the fields within that table. Okay. Once we're on this table, we want to choose the following fields: user's DCID, first name, last name, staff global identifier, and teacher global identifier. Those are the 5 fields that I want. I'm going to hit next. I'm not going to worry about any of this right here, but I'm going to look at this show records button to make sure that it's pulling. Sure enough, there's my staff. Nothing over here. Here is where we have to actually put those identifiers in. Once we get them imported in, this is where they're going to populate. And these identifiers are what they're going to be checking on for that authentication. Can I go back to the 5 fields? Yep. Because there are previous buttons on these. There you go, Stephanie. So the 5 fields, and you have to scroll down to see the user's DCID. First name, last name, and then staff and teacher global identifier. Now, from the few districts that I have helped with this so far, we've come to the decision that they were going to do 2 different uploads, to do the staff in one upload and do the teacher in another upload, and which is perfectly fine. So depending on how you want to do that, you might only choose to do one of these identifiers and not both. It can be a little confusing that they both say teachers, but that's just because it's coming from that table. But it's this staff global identifier and teacher global identifier that's going to be the actual field inside of there. Got it? Okay, good deal. So now I'm going to hit next. I hit show records to populate this just so that I could look at it. I'm going to hit next on this screen right here, and you don't have to show the records. I just do to make sure that it's pulling data. And then I'm not going to really touch any of this right here, but I'm going to hit export. Now, the thing about PowerSchool is they love a text file. Everything comes out as a text file, and that is not how we manipulate data. So do you see that it produced this text file down here? What I want to do now is open up Excel and open that text file with Excel. So let me pull it in.
Hey, Stacy, this is Julian. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, so I found that back on the export screen, if you change the extension to CSV, you can save yourself some time. So in the file name, you just delete .txt and put .csv. It should export as a CSV.
Yeah, that's how I do it also.
Yeah, that's what I did too.
And you can, and I'm going to tell you from experience, you can work with CSVs and do imports, and you can work with text files and do imports. And those 2 files can contain the exact same information, exact same, but just be in a different format. And I will get errors importing CSVs where I won't get errors when I import it in as a text. I don't know why. So I have just, through a lot of trial and error, have learned to try to keep these in text format as much as possible, because for some reason, that's how they like to accept everything. I worked yesterday downloading course files and uploading. I ran it once, even some historical grades files that I was doing. I ran it once through as a CSV, and kept getting an error on certain line numbers. Ran it through as a text and they all went through with no error whatsoever. So I don't know why CSVs kind of blip out sometimes. Just kind of keep that in mind. And if you want to pull it down as a CSV and then save it as a text to do the upload, you can do that as well. So I'm going to come in here and have it to open. Oh, open, browse. And my downloads. Come on, where are you?
Change your file type from all.
Oh, thank you. Because I always forget that.
I've just been doing that for the past several days, and so.
All right, so now I have my file in here. Now, there is one more column that we need to add into this file, and it is called user type. It doesn't produce out there, but you have to differentiate whether these users are teachers or if they are staff. So what I would suggest at this point is to save this file as a template onto your desktop somewhere right now, because we're going to drastically manipulate this file and take all of these people out. But if you don't want to go pull it again and recreate it, go ahead and stop at this point and do a file save as your template and throw it onto your desktop. Because what I'm going to suggest is that you just work with yourself to begin with. And I know you might have other people working in it right now that once you set this up, you would lock out, but we can fix that. The end goal is to have this entire file populated with the users. If the user is a teacher, in other words, a classroom teacher who the only access they need to is PowerTeacher Pro, remember we put our identifier in as email. So I've got to enter my email addresses on these employees. So classroom teachers that get access to PowerTeacher Pro, they are going to have their emails populated in column E where it says teacher global identifier. However, if they are a staff member, as PowerSchool calls them, and they get access to the administrative side, so that powerschool.com/admin website that you have, then you need their email address populated in column D, known as the staff global identifier. So let me clarify that again. If they are a classroom teacher with access to PowerTeacher Pro, you put their email in this column. And if they are a staff member who gets access to the admin portal, then you put their email in this column. For other purposes, if you need things, it's just change the delimiter value to column. Yes, correct, Todd. All right, user type. You're going to put one of two terms in here. If they are a staff member with the admin portal access, whoops, be in the right column, you are going to type staff, uppercase. If they are a classroom teacher that's going into PowerTeacher Pro, you're going to put teacher. So those are the two entries that are going to go in column F based on who your person is. Not from that one, Quay. There is another table you can use that will pull it. I just find it more cumbersome to use that other table. So I would populate and fill it through those columns. That's why a lot of people are doing like a separate staff upload and teacher upload so they can just drag. All right, I'm gonna delete those out. So now let's run a test through and just get you as an administrator in. So what I'm gonna do is go through all of these rows and scroll down until I find myself. Too fast. Here we are. And I'm going to delete everyone in this file except for myself. Linda says, what if they need access to both? That is why a lot of people are doing two uploads so that they can put, because you can't put but one user type in that field at a time. So if you have a person who I mean, they might be a counselor, but also need access to Power Teacher Pro because they teach a course as well. You would have to have an identifier in both spots, but you can only have that one staff type. So a lot of people are running it first through all their staff, and then they're running a second file of just their teachers. That way they can get them into both uploads. You can manually enter it on any staff file, but if you want it to be all done through an upload, that would be my suggestion for that. So because I'm staff needing the admin access, I'm putting my email address in. To column D instead of column E. My user type for both of these accounts are staff. So for right now, you're just doing your account, but eventually you're going to have this file completely, that template file filled with all of your usernames and their email addresses in the correct column with the correct user type inside of there. Once you get that in, save this. And I'm just going to throw it. Actually, I'm just going to throw it on my desktop as a text tab delimited. Save it as a text tab delimited file. Oh, hang on. I want to call this. Quit doing that. What have I got? And minimize those. Questions on that file creation? So we came into Data Export Manager, we got our list of all of our employees, we pulled that file down and we populated their email address inside of that file because we said that's what our identifier is going to be when it matches for authentication. And
for the Microsoft folks, it's, again, the PowerSchool instructions want you for some reason to use the user's object ID inside of Azure AD instead of just their email address. So they go in the instructions, they tell you, well, you want to do an export out of Azure, and then you want to do a VLOOKUP in Excel to marry up the two. And no, you can skip that. I would. I'm just saying that I would. I mean, you may want to use the object ID as the unique identifier. Okay, I would just use the email address. That way, again, I talked about how, making it less complicated. You can totally skip that step about exporting out of Azure AD and doing a VLOOKUP and all that stuff. If all you're doing is just, if you just want to use the email address as the staff identifier, as the global ID.
Yeah, and when you look at the directions, even on the Google side, it tells you to go pull your list of users from Google and then pull the list like that file that we just did and do a merge through those. With us, I can populate all of our email addresses using a formula. So I just did that and saved and imported them in. So however you need to do to get those email addresses in there.
If it's already even in the staff import, I mean, for the most part, It already exists, which is really the frustrating thing about how they implemented this, was instead of just saying, oh, well, let's use the email address field that's already in PowerSchool as the claim, they created this whole other field that you can't even automate an import to or anything. So I really just have no idea why they did that. I tried to press them on that and tried to figure out what the explanation was. I think they were trying to accommodate the 1% instead of the 99%.
Yep.
Anyway, that's what they did. So
well, and to make sure that y'all picked up on what Drew just said, because that's a very important point that I wanted to pull out as we have this conversation. Once we get this in here, and I'm going to pull up my production. Let me pull that over to the screen. So here's my production instance. I want to show you. Stephanie, there's a way to manually do it without having to do the import, and I'll show that. So once you do get this turned on, oh, last name. What it's going to do is augment the security page. So here's my production instance. Normally, y'all are used to seeing a username and password on this tab and on this tab. Well, because I've got it turned on for staff and not teachers, you still see the username password there, but here's what it does. It takes away the username and password boxes and puts this box right here, which is that identity provider global ID. Once we get this first import in, like once we put you in, if you want to go in and just manually add these to all the accounts, you can. I mean, that is what I did. I imported myself, and then for the 9 people that I have working in here right now, I went and added these. But yes, Brian, what Drew said is that once we get this going and you start onboarding new hires, this is not something that you can script in to upload into as a field each night. These have to be manually touched. So as you onboard a new employee and their account gets created, somebody's got to come in here and either you've got to do a file upload like what we're going to do here in just a second, or you just got to manually type their email address in right here. And yep, we all slapped our forehead when we said the same thing as well.
It is I can't explain. I don't know that I had the vocabulary to talk about how stupid that is and why they didn't just, I mean, first of all, why didn't they just use everybody's going to use email address. I don't understand why you wouldn't use email address. It already exists. Like you're going to put your email address on your staff records. So why not hard
and
code
we're gonna script those in nightly.
Right, provide them. So, and then they added this other field. Well, okay, maybe that's another field we got to import into. Oh wait, I can only you can one time import it to it. So you can wake up every morning and go remember, okay, I got to import into this field, but there's no way to automate that. It's not automated. Like it's not as part of AutoCom or whatever.
There's nothing.
I'm going to keep fighting for that. I'm probably going to talk to a custom developer about, is there any other way maybe to do that? I think because it's a database field, you can probably do a power, create a Power Query, and then you can, through an API, you can write to a Power Query, hopefully. So I don't know. Well, I'm going to try to figure out one way, and then hopefully I can share it with the rest of you guys after we figure it out. But
and Drew, correct me if I'm wrong. This is going to be true for staff, teachers, or students. Like none of them.
Correct. Yeah. So once you turn it on for if on that previous screen where you enable it for admin, teacher, staff, that field does not show up until you check that box. So once you check it for students, that this identity provider global ID is going to be there. But as far as I know, you cannot, there is no, they did not include that in AutoCom to be able to schedule a nightly import into that field.
And you would figure something of that would have to change. And remember, y'all, this SSO is brand new to the whole PowerSchool platform. So as soon as the world gets their head wrapped around the fact that this is now a manual, something that everybody has to do, there's going to be a lot of pushback on it. There's going to have to be some changes to that, because everybody who is who is automatically creating their user accounts don't want to have to then come in and still do some type of manual process to it. For now, if you want to use an SSO, there is no option. And right now, when I look at the lesser of two evils, do I want to keep resetting usernames and passwords because they lock themselves out every time? Or do I want to just have to manually touch your account one time and put an email address in? I'm choosing the option to manually touch your account one time and put the email address in for right now.
Yeah, I mean, you can, and you can one time, you can, not one time, but you can manually import into this field. So it's not like you're just, you have to, go one by one on all the students and everything, you can import into the field, but you just can't schedule an import. And if you can't schedule it, I'm not for it. You got to have some way to, you know, unless you got, you know, 200 kids in your district or whatever, it's just difficult.
Yeah, so I mean, each day you would come in and pull the export of this, you know, if you've got new staff. Now, at the beginning of the year when we're onboarding a whole bunch of staff, you would probably want to do it through a file import. But if it's just once a year where, oh, today I hired a new special ed teacher, I could go throw that in on that one teacher manually and be done with it. For students, like today, I know that so far we've enrolled 8 new students this morning, then I'm going to go pull that file, just import it and be done at the beginning of each morning. So yeah, unfortunately, no importing into that field right there. All right, I'm gonna move my production back out of the way. Go back here. All right, so you have that file with your email address inside of it. Correct? Everybody has their file saved somewhere. All right, what we're gonna do now is reverse the process and go in and import that file where we just pulled it out with Data Export Manager. We're going to import it with Data Import Manager. So back under importing and exporting, hang on a second. I want to check something, yeah. All right, we're gonna go to Data Import Manager. So we pulled out of Data Export Manager. We're going to push back in through Data Import Manager. I will tell you, y'all are going to come to love Data Import Manager and Quick Import. I've been using them religiously since we started this pilot thing. So Data Import Manager. So I need to choose the file. So I'm going to go find that file that I just saved. Oh, I've been doing stuff with pictures. And there's my test user file. That's that text file that I just saved. And I'm going to import, and I want to go find the field called SSO User Mapping. So here it is right here, SSO User Mapping. Now here's where I always, let's see, because in some, they say to leave it Windows and some say Unicode. Usually I can tell if it's messed up on the next screen if it throws a whole bunch of weird fields. There you go. If it delineates them all out, you have the settings right. If you don't have the settings right, you can go back to previous. See if I swap this, let's see if I can get it to mess up. It'll like put them all on one line for you. I don't think it matters which one of these ways you choose. All right, I only need to really map 3 fields on here. So I want to map the columns that are in the table that I just uploaded to the actual table inside of PowerSchool. So the teacher's user DCID number is going to be this user DCID mapping. I'm not going to worry about mapping first name and last name. For this, remember, I'm only uploading the staff at this time. So for teacher staff global identifier, I'm going to use that as the global identifier. And then for that user type column that we added manually onto the field or onto the file, it is the SSO user type. So those are the 3 fields that I want to map to get this into the program. User DCID, global identifier for staff, because that's the only one I was uploading right now. I'm not worried about uploading the teachers. If I was doing a second file for teachers, I would then change that one to be the global identifier. I'm going to hit next. And I'm going to hit import. Now, notice that it failed because I've already, let's see, duplicate global identifier. Oh, so why did it fail on me? Because in my file, I've got two of the exact same global identifiers, so I can't put the same email address on both of those. So let me just delete. My problem is I don't remember which one is the correct file. I'm not going to actually enable this anyway, so it doesn't matter. Yours should have imported just fine. Replace that. So let me go back through that again. Importing and exporting. Data import manager.
Hey, Stacy, if you have two accounts like you had
coming
out, how do you know which one's the correct one?
I would had to have named them differently, and in that, on that, when I said show results field, I'd have to make sure that I picked the ID number to the one that went to the correct, because there's nowhere in here that we see that ID number associated with the account until we pull it out in that export. So I would have to put something in the name to differentiate the two accounts. Like in the original name on the security settings file or information file of it. So SSO user mapping, next. Map these fields again. Next, import, and this time it should go through. And as you're going through, when it says process, you do have to hit the refresh button at the top to see. One row failed, it's skipped, and that's the header row, so don't worry about that. Everybody's going to get a failure on that first one. And then it says row 2 inserted. Okay. So we have now pushed that global identifier. So basically, I pushed my email address to my security page for the global identifier. And to make sure that it's actually there, I'm going to re-export and just see, do I see my email address beside my name? So that very first process that we went through with Data Export Manager, I'm going to go through it again, pull it, and see if it populates my email address in that table. So additional data sets, and I want to go find that staff list of staff. And remember the 5 fields, I had user DCID. That's that number that we can't really see in the staff file. First name, last name, staff and teacher global identifier. Hit next, show records. So remember, I only uploaded myself. So I want to change this to 100, and I'm going to scroll down to find me. See what page I'm on. Okay, so it wasn't that one. It should be the next one. There it is. So here's that file that I imported to this right here. So I know I'm in there and I'm on the table. So everybody check yours and see, is your name populating there? Questions so far? Once you've confirmed that you see your email addresses that you uploaded in there, here's where the moment of truth is. It's time to turn it on. But let me give you some warning. Sometimes things can mess up. And so what you want to do before you turn this on, do you have somebody else who has access to this? If so, here's my advice. You both need to do these next steps. One of you have your screen open and one of you actually click the button so that after you go and turn it on, if something messes up, you can have them disable it real quick since somebody is still logged into the program.
So Stacy, this is going to sound like a stupid question.
No stupid questions.
They're about to replace all of our users. So for me to do it now would really be a moot point.
Yes, if you once you Wait a minute. What do you mean replace your users?
They're about to dump all the users that we have in there, and they want to do a fresh import. We've been able to clean up. So for us to really do it, if
you're gonna have to go back through it. Yeah.
It's gonna kill all those fields, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So as a result, I also don't want to turn this on just yet.
Right. So you would be at the point where you would be ready to go through this import. So as soon as they get your staff back in, go pull them out, do the export, fill in the email addresses, and upload them. And then you're going to go through this next step that I'm about to show.
Okay.
I'll do. I'll give another. Here's another way you can attack this, and just like Stacy said, do one of these two things, because if you don't, and SSO doesn't work that first time, you're locked out. So what I did to test it was I just turned it on for teachers. I did not turn it on for admin. I just turned it on to teachers, and then I just created another staff record that was a teacher, and that way I could test it just for teachers, because right now teachers aren't logging in anyway. So I left admin unchecked and just did it for teachers, and so that way my admin account wasn't gonna get locked out.
And so I'll walk through what Drew just said to test this so you can see it beginning to end. So I've got that here. So now what I need to do, you remember the original page of setup in OIDC under system? We need to go back to that page. Okay. And I know that I just imported mine, but here it is. It takes you importing one to be able to get the field to populate on that security screen for any staff or student. It doesn't matter what, but you've got to go through this process of one person in before it will populate anywhere to do manually. So I'm going to now come back over here to the left under setup and system. And I'm going to scroll down after it finishes loading to security, find that OIDC authentication setup. Here is where you turn it on. So if I wanted to go ahead and turn it on for admins, I could check that box. Not going to do that yet. Going to test it first. I'm going to turn it on for teachers, even though I know I did not upload any teacher's email in that file. I'm going to turn it on for teachers, and I'm going to hit submit. And it warns you, you are going to prevent other users from being able to sign in if you do this. Confirm. So what that does is for my teacher accounts, I just took away that username and password box on the teacher's tab of security. So I'm going to go back to the main screen. And I have a teacher who I've been playing with. It's popping to the admin one, even though that's where we were last time. Still got username and password. She's not an admin, not worried about admin. But over teacher affiliations, notice there's a box here. So see, I've turned it on. I can go manually type all these in. If you're a small district, you don't have but 12 employees, forget file upload, just come type them in. I don't know if it'll let me do this, but we'll see. I'm going to give it my email address and see if it pops an error because it notices that other one. Nope, we're good. So now to test if the setup works, I'm going to come over here. Actually, I'm going to open an incognito window. And I'm going to back off admin. Oop. Put teachers. And all right, it's asking me to sign in. At least that part of the setup was right in the redirect. And if it takes me in, oh, yep, We all do two-step verification, right? It is me. Give it just a second. All done. Ta-da! I know I set everything up correctly. So now I feel confident in going in and turning it on for the rest of my employees. So if I wanted to come back, all right, and actually I'm going to delete that, hit submit. So I just killed that login connection for that teacher with my Google account. I'm going to go back to my settings. So under system, back under security to OIDC. I'm going to uncheck it for teachers because I don't want them using that anymore. And I feel confident enough to turn this on for staff. Now I can turn this on for staff, hit submit, again, warning, confirm. Now what I've done is anybody who had admin access, I just killed it because they now no longer have a Google account associated with them if they tried to log in with Google. It would give them an error saying I can't map you to anything. So I would come back in here. So let's just say it was myself and Landon are the only two that are working in this. So if I want to double check my account and see I have two accounts and I don't know which one of those I just set that email address to. I come here to admin access and roles and say, yep. Check your account before you log out to make sure your email got populated correctly from the upload that you just did. If you see your email address in there, then you're good to go to leave this turned on for staff. But if I've got that other staff member that I need to have access because I've got Landon's working in it and my 3 high school counselors are working in it, I would need to pick those users and come in here real quick, and I'm just going to do a manual. Type in their email address. And as soon as you have their address in, they now can use their Google account to log in.
Stacey,
so guys, that is how you set up the single sign-on kind of from beginning to end. You can manually do these once you get that global ID box in here, or you can file upload them in here.
Just to verify, Stacey, that identifier global ID box that you see right there, that does not show up until you turn it on.
Correct.
Okay.
Until you check that enable box. So back here, and I can turn it off at any time and go back to the usernames and passwords. So if I go back to system, oh, I always forget to wait on it. I'm impatient. And go back to OIDC, because that checkbox is there, then it's got that ID provider for you. I'm actually going to turn it off because I want to see your usernames and passwords.
Hey, so something I talked to our implementation person about yesterday is once you turn it on for students, there's really no way for them to access through the app because the SSO does not currently work there. So just keep that in mind if you wanted to, I guess, publicize that the app is available. They won't be able to do it if they have SSO.
Yeah, so we asked Rayanne about that, and they're supposed to be working that in a fix that's coming out soon. And in fact, somebody put something in the community about it the other day. They posted the fixed number that was going to be coming in. So they are working on that, but that is true. If you turn the SSO on for students, it will not work with the mobile app. They can still go to the website on a browser and log in. They just can't do it through the app at this point with their SSO. So you can turn this on for staff, for teachers, for parents. If you keep your parent, if you give your email, if you give your parents email addresses in your domain, you can turn it on for them. I don't know who does that. I know we don't. So we won't be doing that. If it is turned on for students, then you will also see on the student screen. So if I'm going to pull up Bradley. Oh, I'm still on staff. Oh, here he is. It will change this access account screen. So where right now students have usernames and passwords that you would assign to them, instead, if you turn that checkbox on for students, it's going to do the same thing here. It's going to give that global ID provider box here for the student, and that's where you would put the email address that you would want them to sync to for Google.
Also, you know, one question that we had initially was, well, what if you do one or the other? Because there's one URL for students and parents. So it's the /public is how they get there. You know, there's a separate URL for teachers as admin, but for students and parents, it's the same URL. So the question was, what does that, you know, how does that work? Well, if you turn it on for students and not for parents, which I'm assuming that most of you would do, you know, I don't know very many systems that have parents that are in their identity system. The login page is basically will turn into a fork. It will have click here if you're a parent, click here if you're a student. You'll have a picker there.
So I just turned it on for, oh, I've got to log out. Sign out. So do you see what it does now? So it separates the sign-in page, where before you turn this on for students or parents, it was all one screen, and at the top it said student parent sign in and had the username and password box. Where now, because I turned it on for students, it says parent sign in, they would use their username and password that they set their account up with, and then student sign in would be here, and it should direct it to, and of course, I'm not logged in with any Google account, so I'm in incognito, but it would ask them to sign in with their Google account at that point. So that's what the page changes to if you turn it on for students. Okay. Questions on the SSO? All right. Oh, I got questions in the chat. At least one group roles page. Heatherly, that's fine. We can get together later on this week. I'll email you. Brian, in a minute, can we go over how you handle people that need both admin and teacher logins when setting up the SSO? So yeah, Brian, it's actually, so you know how we did that file upload just a second ago with mine, with like my setup? So I would do two files. I would upload the staff file, like pull all of my people who need access to this admin side, to that /admin URL, put their email addresses in, put staff as a user type, upload that, then turn around and pull that same file just for the teachers that need Power Teacher Pro access. But what that's going to do is on the staff file, and again, you can do it manually or you can do it through the two uploads. But when you have staff, on that security screen, it's going to put that global identifier on both of these tabs right here. So I would have the global identifier here, and then on the teacher tab, I would have that box again. So you'd actually have to enter it in both places because you have to give access. I mean, it's just like it is now. If you had a counselor who needed the admin access because of counseling roles, but also they're an academic advisor and have a course they actually work in Power Teacher Pro, you would have had to give them a username and password here and a username and password here. Well, instead, you're going to have their email address as that global identifier in both of those places.
Okay, so that's not why you have two records for yourself.
No, the reason I have two records is because when we started as a pilot, the first accounts we created were our own staff records to become administrators of pilot. And then when I imported my staff file for my now got pulled in. And so I duplicated.
All right, so
that's why I have two.
That explains. Okay, Thank you.
Now, a lot of people like to keep 2 files because they want to have like an administrator kind of account and then a generic version of them account with less rights on it. I know a lot of tech directors who do that. It's something you could do in here as well. Any other questions about SSO? Did anybody follow along the steps and have a hiccup that we need to go back and address? I know we had a lot of conversation in that, so that took longer than the 45 minutes, but hey, y'all were able to go through step by step so you could see it instead of just looking at the slides in PowerPoint. I wanted y'all to kind of go through and see how to touch each one of those. I'm just excited at the fact I will never have to unlock a user account again, period, because I unlock every teacher. Questions on SSO?